I think there's just one requisition today,
Right,
so
yeah,
I'm
there's
fine
just
with
one.
it.
Me too.
Yes. Betty?
And that's it, that's all we have.
Very good. Auditor Nolan, good morning.
Good morning.
I have a feeling we're not gonna like our discussion very much.
Just what you wanted on this hot Tuesday morning to discuss property taxes. I know you're excited to be here for it. Got my interns, Bill and Sophia, they're rising juniors at Mason High School, so they're very excited to learn about property taxes and what their future has for them here. I told them you guys would have lots of questions. So I was here 3 years ago. I was thinking about it almost to the day and gave a very similar presentation, which wasn't quite as bad as this. And there's a lot of people that follow online and stuff, and I got lots of questions last year. So I'm hoping I get feedback from you guys. This is kind of the first time we've been giving this presentation. I think I have 40 meetings planned to give it. So any feedback as to how best to explain what's going to happen to people next year would be greatly appreciated. But the main takeaway is there's a sizable increase in property values happening, which I think everybody should know. You know, we live in this world, so sometimes I forget that not everybody's worried about that kind of thing. But all you have to do is hop on Zillow or check out any property for sale, and you will see that property values are dramatically increasing everywhere in the country, but almost nowhere more so than in Warren County. And so we're going to talk about what that does to impact us. We, by law, as you all know, have to reevaluate the properties every 3 years in Ohio. It's on a cycle. This happened 3 years ago, as I said. It happened 6 years ago. It happened 9 years ago. And each time in my tenure, values have increased by record amounts, and this is no different. This is the largest increase that we've ever seen of property values in Warren County that we can track. And for sure in any of our time doing this, it's the largest number that we've ever seen. The state does, and you've heard a lot last year, so every county that touches us did this last year. And so you guys that own property in other counties, you that live in other counties went through this last year. Same exact impact, right? So this isn't a new thing. This isn't a picking on Warren County thing. Every single county that touches us did it last year. All had very similar numbers to us this year. So for a lot of you, it shouldn't come as a surprise, but it's happening to Warren County this year for the taxes we'll pay next year. I feel like there's this idea that we take a dartboard and pick a number and just kind of throw numbers at houses. That is not how it works. It's a very mathematical process as to how we do it, and it's almost completely based on sales, which is relatively straightforward in your average subdivision. Commissioner Jones subdivision, pretty standard homes. They look about the same. Prosecutor McGarry's, they all look about the same, pretty easy. Commissioner Grossman, a little harder, but about the same, they're same kind of homes. Commissioner Young, you're in your own category. How do you appraise the houses that are unique? So it gets challenging in those worlds, but for the vast majority of houses in Warren County, we look at the sales that have occurred in your immediate neighborhood and say, what are they selling for? Your house is probably worth something close to that. And we make adjustments for condition and for square footage, but for the most part, if a house near you sells that's like your house is worth close to that, and that's what we base it on. We'll talk about how that's not a perfect system, but to appraise 110,000 parcels, you have to do it that way. We can't go into each house and look at it and say, all right, this is worth this is worth that. The cost of doing that, the time in doing that, cost prohibitive. Nowhere in the country, in the world, does it that way. So, this is the worst slide in the presentation. I'm going to change it, but it's meant to show a purpose. These are all of the different levies that exist throughout Ohio. Very confusing, very messy, and every couple of years we create some more to make it more confusing and messy. The top ones are the one we've always talked about the most, and the one that affects us in this building the most, the inside unvoted millage. It's existed for 100 years. The 10 mills that are split amongst the subdivisions, and in every presentation I've ever given you in the past, that's all we've ever cared about. Because every other time I've given the presentation, I've said, values go up, all of the other rates come down, and your taxes don't go up that much. The only amount they've ever gone up in the past is for that unvoted inside millage, and it's always been just a little bit, 2, 3, 4% increase. Never really felt that bad. We'll talk about why this year's different. And it affects these other levies down here that apply more to the schools, the fire departments, the other agencies that exist. Your fire departments, your police, your RDD levy, our senior levy, our mental health, all of those levies will not see one dime from this reappraisal. So all of those agencies, and all of your communities, you've seen fire levies recently, that's because they don't get any new money for those levies from that reappraisal. They all fall into the values go up, rates come down, they get the same amount of money. The only way they ever get new dollars is new construction. And so communities like Harlan, Washington, where they don't see a lot of new construction, they never get new money for their levies. Where you do see the impact, where you do see the increase is the inside millage that we've always talked about, and the school millage that we're gonna talk about, which is something called the 20 mil floor, which I don't think I've ever really talked about with you all before, and I should have, to be honest. It was this hurricane that we all saw coming out on the ocean, and we knew it was coming, and we didn't do anything about it, and now it's hitting, and we're all getting wet. I don't know if it's the best analogy, I just made it up. But, so before 2004, values up, rates down, nobody's hurt. Now, values go up, but the rates stopped coming down. In every district except Kings and Mason, every school district has hit this floor, meaning now it's not just the 10 mills that we're gonna collect new money on, it's an additional 20 mills in each school district. So 28 to 30 mills of new millage that is not coming down anymore. So when those 2, 3, 4% increases are never gonna happen again. It's always gonna be half or more of a value increase is what taxes are gonna do. And so if you see a 30% value increase, you're gonna see a 15%, 16%, up to 20% tax increase. A general rule of thumb is take your value increase, divide it by 2, and that's how much your taxes are going up. That's significant. That's real dollars for our homeowners. And everything I'm talking about now are for homeowners. Businesses I'll talk about later, but this is all for the homeowners.
Explain the 20 mil floor a little bit more.
So, it's in the Constitution, it says that schools must collect 20 mils of operating millage, okay? And so in the past, we passed all these levies around the county. So everybody was in the 30s, 35, but as values went and their rates came down, those rates kept coming down until they hit that 20 mil floor. So they can't go down anymore. Mason and Kings made a decision, we're not gonna try to hit the floor. We're gonna keep passing operating levies so that we don't ever hit the floor and get more money that way. Every other school district made a conscious decision, we're not gonna pass levies like that. We're going to intentionally hit that floor so we get more money through the reevaluation process. That's one side of it. The other side to it is they kind of manipulated, is the only word I can come up with, the rules, use the rules that were in place. If you pass an emergency levy, doesn't count towards the floor. If you pass a substitute levy, doesn't count towards the floor. You pass a bond levy, doesn't count to the floor. So we're not only collecting 20 mils. I'll show Springboro as an example. Come back. So Springboro has 23, 28, over 30 mils that they're collecting, but they're at the 20 mil floor. Franklin's even higher. Little Miami's even higher. And so, but by getting to that 20 mil floor, by getting that operating number to 20, we can't go any lower than that. So they get free money. Just like we get extra money on our 2.57, they get that times 10. They get extra money on 20 mils, which is just a substantial increase. Something like 68% of the counties or school districts in the state are now at the floor. In the next 5 years, almost every school district in the state will be at the floor. And so they'll just be getting more and more new money. Cincinnati Public Schools hit the floor this past year, by far the largest district in the state to ever hit the floor. It used to be a rural thing. Eastern Ohio counties were at the floor, smaller districts were at the floor. It was never really imagined that big school districts would hit the floor, and now they're all hitting it. Helpful? Need more?
So that's the impact on the ones that have not hit it, but on the two that have hit it, you're saying that's gonna be the same impact, or?
I'll show you. I've got them all laid
Okay, that's
out.
fine.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah, and so this is Springboro schools, and this is everybody but Kingston Mason. Springboro schools, there's more to the slide, it doesn't show great on there. But anyways, this is what it looks like. You're gonna see, you know what, if I did it the right way, that as their values increase, and Springboro's gonna see on average a 27% increase. So that's what we're gonna see across the county. Pretty much every house in the county is gonna go up about 27%, some higher, some lower, but on average 27%, which means a 15% increase or so on your taxes in most places. Springboro, you're gonna see almost that to a T. Springboro is kind of the perfect example. They're gonna see a 27% increase in their value. They're gonna see a 15% increase in their taxes. About 75% of that is gonna go to the school district. About 10% to the county, 10% to the city, a little bit to the township, but almost all of that is gonna go to the school district, which is millions of dollars of revenue. The county is gonna see probably about $6 million of additional revenue from this increase countywide, but each school district is gonna see millions of dollars of additional unvoted revenue as a result of them hitting the floor and this value increase.
So let me see if I understand this. In Springboro, if you have a $100,000 house,
Yep.
your increase is going to be $237 on that $100,000. That's the increase.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and so if it's $300,000 house, your increase is gonna be in the neighborhood of $700, a little over $700.
That's right.
All right.
And that's what you should expect to see everywhere in the county. About a $700 increase on a $300,000. I use $300,000 mostly. That's the average home in Warren County. So a $700 increase everywhere in the county is kind of what I'm predicting.
And that's that's a annual
That's
amount.
annual, yeah. So, $50 to $70 a month in your escrow payment, right? And that's what we really talk about with people anymore. Most people escrow. It's a big change since I took office, the number of people that have moved to escrow. And so that's what we're expecting people to budget for. If I was budgeting, that's where my house falls, budget for a $700 increase a year in your taxes. And that's what we'll see in most of the county.
All right, and in Mason, you haven't talked, oh, you were about to talk.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Mason is the opposite. Mason has not hit the floor, and so Mason will see a much smaller increase, only about 8% increase, and most of that will go to the city. The city has charter millage, as Mayor Grossman was aware, and they've put in other places, so the city will see an increase. The school district, a very small increase, because they're not at the floor. They're operating under House Bill 920, the way things were meant to operate, and so they're not going to see. Now, Mason has a lot of advantages, as we all know. Huge corporations, huge companies that provide a lot of tax dollars that nobody else gets. So Mason Schools has a huge advantage in that regard. But Mason is going to see what they've seen every cycle for the last decade, which is a sizable increase, much smaller tax increase. Most people won't even notice it.
What about Kings, since they're in the same boat?
Coming up.
Okay. You got that.
Let's skip forward and I'll come back. So Kings would be in the best situation. Would be. If things had gone normally, Kings would see almost no tax increase. They're in the Deerfield Township part of Kings. They only would see the inside millage. The speech that I've given every time before is what Kings would see, and it would have worked great. But, it's a big but, they passed the levy. And so Kings is actually going to see the highest increase in the whole county because they passed a levy in March to build their new high school and new buildings. So as a result of the reappraisal, they will see almost no increase. But as a result of the levy, they are going to see on that same house a higher increase than anywhere else in the county, roughly $740 on that $300,000 house.
So on the reappraisal, it's negligible, but yet the voters passed a new levy, which is voted on, and it is what it is.
That's exactly right. However, that's right. That's there's no however to that point. People don't know. Right, the average person's not gonna remember that they passed, if they knew they passed a levy, and so it's all gonna get lumped together. So I feel my job is to get out there and let people know, yes, your taxes are going up, this is why, this is where, this is how, and so I'm doing my best effort. I think I've failed in that in the past, to be honest with you. The number of people that are shocked that there's a reappraisal happening is a lot. And that surprises me, because I live it and see it all day, every day, but the average person isn't. So I'm trying to do a better job of getting out there and telling people, be ready for this. This is coming. And really, other than the city of Mason, Mason schools, you're going to see a 700+ increase on your taxes on every $300,000 house in the county. The city of Mason's a little insulated, but everybody else is seeing it, either because of the reappraisal or because of this levy. And so this kind of is a chart my staff created, because I gave this presentation to my staff, and they said that the floor part is just too confusing. They didn't understand it. I didn't explain it well, however we want to say it. And so this is Springboro schools versus Mason schools, and you can kind of see from these charts. Mason City School District, this is their value, this is the rate, that's the what their taxes are. They stay pretty even for going time, and this is every other school district in the county. As values go up, the taxes are gonna follow very close to it, because their rates can't come down anymore. So I don't know if that visual helps. It seemed to help them. You know, when I've gone out and started giving this presentation to realtors and other groups, I always ask the question, who has the highest taxes in Warren County? And the answer is always Mason, right? Every time I've given the presentation, every time I've ever asked the question. It's just not true. And frankly, it hasn't been true in a while, and it's gonna be less and less true as we go. The highest taxes in Warren County are in Middletown, which we only have a small part. Second is Franklin and Kings, very close to each other, followed by Little Miami, and then Mason. And Mason's going to continue to fall lower and lower on the tax rate chart.
Is that because Mason has more taxable property wealth?
Exactly why, exactly why, yeah.
So those communities that have less taxable property wealth, which of course was the whole basis for DeRolf,
Yep.
are those counties that are taxing at higher rates because they have less valuation.
All of the rest of us have to pay the same for a firefighter, same for a street crew, and we've got less value to do with it, and so we have to have higher rates. And it's as simple as that. We could talk about how we got there and all those things if we wanted, but that's the fact of it. So this is a big thing for us.
Well, that's actually a really good way of explaining it, though, that, you know, the cost of police and fire, you know, your basic services in your community, those costs are very, very similar based on population. And if one community has a much higher valuation to collect that fixed cost from, the rate is going to be lower. I mean, that's
exactly right. That's a very good way to put it. Farmers, which is still a large, we have over 3,000 parcels in CAUV in Warren County. They are going to see a massive increase, over 100% in most cases. Their taxes are going to go up about 100% because of the way rates are done. Now, admittedly, their taxes are still going to be incredibly low, relatively speaking, but it's a big increase, and so I would expect a lot of angry farmers coming in. What we see more and more in Warren County is less of the traditional farmer. They know this is happening. They're not the ones complaining. Fred, Union Township, Von Haar, Fred Von Haar knows this is coming. You know, Kubicki knows this is coming, or Lutmer knows this is coming. They're ready for it. But the people that have 15 acres, that they have 10 that are getting hayed by somebody else, they don't know this is coming. They've got no idea what CAUV really is. They just know it's a tax break. And those are the ones that are gonna see their taxes go up dramatically and be very upset as a result. Again, still a huge savings. It's my little pitchfork that I'm expecting to see. So this is a property out in Washington Township. We've got it valued at $600,000 market value. Because of the reappraisal, it'll move up to $800,000, which means nothing. They don't pay anything on that. Right now, the CAUV value is $150,000. It'll move up to $300,000. Right now, if they were in the market, they'd be paying $7,000 a year in taxes. They pay $1,700. Again, next year, if they were in the market, they'd be paying almost 10,000 in taxes. They will pay 3,700. Incredibly low, and a huge tax savings. They're saving over $6,000, but their taxes almost doubled. Their expenses to their business, the way a lot of the true farmers see it, almost doubled. So I try to be sympathetic. I understand. Grew up in CAUV. It's a big deal, but those are the facts of it. There's nothing we can do about CAUV. We have no impact over it. We have no say in it. It is the most talked about thing when I'm in Columbus. The loudest group by far is the Farm Bureau. I don't know if that was your experience, Senator Jones, when you were up there, but they are very loud, and I have heard a lot about it. I have the privilege of going to speak to them, I think, 3 times this year, because they are upset about this happening. I'll leave it at that. Commercial property. So I've never actually included a slide about commercial property in this in the past, because we've never touched commercial values. If you've been around, we've always left commercial values flat, very intentionally. The only time we ever changed commercial values in the last 20 years is when either somebody complained about the value up or down, or there was a sale. And then we said, all right, we know what it's worth, it's sold for that, and we raise or lower the value to the sale. The problem with doing it that way is we now have dramatic disparity between properties that have sold and properties that haven't, that are almost identical properties. And that's not the goal. And so we are going to raise commercial values on some commercial properties, not office buildings, because there's still a real issue of office space, of which we have limited in Warren County, thankfully. But most other commercial values, we're gonna see a 10% increase across the board in Warren County. Because of everything I said about Mason, that applies to all commercial buildings everywhere in the county. Nobody's at the floor for commercial properties. So even though we're gonna increase values by 10%, the taxes are gonna go up almost nothing. And really, in most cases, nothing on commercial properties. So I don't expect a lot of upset commercial property owners in January when they get their tax bill. But I do expect some when they get their value increase notice, telling them that their value went up, just because they've never experienced that in Warren County before. It's a new thing, and we've got to do some education. But we've always made it an effort to keep commercial values down, to keep our businesses here in Warren County. But we've just reached such a high value of these buildings that we feel obligated to raise them some. Timing and process. We are submitting everything to the state. So everything I told you is hypothetical, that it's going to happen this way. But we're submitting everything to the state this week. We'll get a response from them sometime in July telling us how close we are, if they want us to go up or down a little, but it's going to be very close to what we just saw. In September, we'll send a notice to everyone saying this is what your new value is. We expect a lot of confusion, a lot of questions. We'll have every single day Zoom meetings set up with appraisal staff, with myself, for a solid 6 weeks for people that think their value's too high, that just have questions to come in. We've got to submit everything before Thanksgiving, and then obviously tax bills will go out next year based on these new rates and new values that are set. We will get some wrong. We always get some wrong. I say we're about 99% right, which is pretty good, but with 110,000 parcels, that means 1,100 parcels are going to be wrong. Most of those will be wrong because they're too low, because that's just kind of how it works in the way we do things, but there will be several that are too high. Really important that they come in and let us know. If you don't come in and tell us your value is too high, we can't do anything about it. We won't realize it. If you get past the time, March 31st, we can't do anything about it. You're stuck with that value for the rest of the year. And so, like I said, I know we're going to get some wrong. I know we're going to have some too high. We work hard to make sure we don't, but we will. So if you have people that are complaining to you, hey, they raised my value, I could never sell it for this, please have them come to me. Don't have them stew. Don't have them, go to the newspaper. Have them come to me, and we can look at it and try to figure it out. Usually what I get is not my value is too high. Usually I get my taxes are too high, which we can't do anything about, very little about, or my neighbor's value is too low. That is the number one complaint we get is my house is not as nice as my neighbor's and you've got me valued more. We can try to do something about that, but the answer isn't lowering your value, it's raising your neighbor's value. which sometimes we have to do. Often it's because they have a finished basement that we don't know about, or they've got, additional space that we don't know about. But that's the most common thing. I would advise you, whether it's in Warren County or any other county, that does not get you very far. The best thing you can come to us is, hey, I can never sell my house for this amount, and mean it. Like, mean it. If you say, hey, I can never sell the building for that, we are gonna look at it. Almost always, we lower the values when people show us that. But almost never do we lower the values when they say, yeah, my neighbor's value's too low. We never lower yours to get to it. So, just kind of, as you talk to people, as people, I know, we all have different spheres, and people talk to you, that's my advice for that. I was gonna make a slide, it will be in the future, of what can we do? Because people are gonna be upset. We saw it all over, through the last cycle. The best thing we can do is talk to Adam and Scott and Steve and tell them, these are real issues. They've failed to address property taxes for 2 decades now. They continually cut income taxes, which is great. They continue to cut revenue to the state, which is fine. But they've also cut the local government fund. They've cut owner-occupied credit. They keep cutting things related to property taxes, which means by definition, our property taxes are gonna have to go up to meet need. That might not be a bad thing for Warren County. We're a high-income county. We send a lot of money to Columbus. It might be better that we keep it here and we just vote our own taxes up property-wise. It's a bad solution for senior citizens. It's a bad solution for low-income people. But, talking with them, they formed a committee on property tax review. I've testified a few times in front of it. It's worthless. The members of it admit it's worthless. They're gonna do nothing. Senator Blessing, who was my second favorite senator, after Senator Wilson, of course, is on the committee.
Oh.
And he said it will do nothing. And it's frustrating. There are 15 or 16 bills in the State House right now to address property taxes. None of them are gonna pass. Most of them don't make any sense. They were just put out there because they look good and it looks like we're trying to do something. They didn't even talk to their county auditors or people that know property taxes before putting them out there. There's a couple really good ones. One that's passed the Senate, just sitting in the House. So that's one thing we can do. The other thing is we control a small part of inside millage, as we all know. And so do we want to address a slight reduction in inside millage? We did it 3 years ago. A large reduction 3 years ago. I'm not sure many people noticed, to be honest. Would a slight reduction do anything? Really, everything is about school funding. Until we address school funding, everything else we're doing is kind of window dressing. Everything about property taxes is school funding. And so would a slight rollback in inside millage mean something? Token, maybe, but we could do it. It would help some people. It'd be money. And so, those are the two issues that we can look at. Usually I rail against TIFs and property tax abatements and things like that because they have a real impact on taxable value that impacts all of this. But you guys don't do that. We don't have any TIFs. We have very few, very little property tax abatements at the county level. So when I go to South Lebanon, they get a lecture on their TIFs and abatements. I'm not going to give you guys that lecture because you don't do that. So questions, things I can present better?
How does House Bill 920 interact with this?
So House Bill 920, which was passed in the 70s during the same type of high inflation, is why all of these pieces look like they do. So House Bill 920 takes our senior levy 0.81 to 0.0801, takes 0.58 to 0.46, takes 0.3. It lowers those, right? That's the way House Bill 920 works. The floor stops House Bill 920 from working anymore. House Bill 920, it works on every levy that's not at the floor, but the floor is half our taxes. And so the House Bill 920 dies with the floor, basically. It's dramatic, goes into a coma with the floor.
Well, that's what that's why I was asking the question is that, as you well know, 920 has been the biggest kind of thorn in the side of superintendents who are responsible for helping to pass local tax levies. And so this seems to kind of eviscerate the impact of 920, which, back when 920 was passed, it was, instigated by the then governor and the legislature to want to keep unvoted tax increases from happening. And so we sort of are back, has there been any discussion around an adjustment to the impacts of 9/20 to mitigate this? It's the same issue, it's just now 4 decades later.
So my proposal is just that. The idea of House Bill 920 and the floors and the inside millage was that districts would always get an inflationary growth, but not more without going to the voters. The floor stops that in this environment. And so what I've said is that you basically said that the law that we drafted for the legislature was that you would apply 920 to the floor, but you would still give school districts an inflationary increase, just not more than an inflationary increase. School districts are gonna see 25% increases in their revenue as a result of this when there's 6% inflation. That's too much.
Well, that seems like a pretty reasonable solution, that you're not touching 920, the intent of 920, but you are recognizing a high inflationary time where costs are going up. So why is that? Where's the pushback on that?
Schools have planned for this.
Yeah.
This is not an accident that schools are hitting the floor. They have planned for this, they have budgeted for this, and so they're pushing back, the one pushback.
But yeah, yes, I hear you, like that, but nobody was predicting the inflationary time we're
Exactly
in.
right.
And so they also should expect that the political leadership would say, well, there's not an intention, that intention to allow districts to get unvoted tax increases has not changed. And so, I understand they're planning for that, but even in their planning, they were not anticipating this level of inflation. And in this instance, you're allowing for opportunities during high periods of inflation for them to get that inflationary adjustment to the extent that property tax valuations are increasing at the same time.
If you look at schools, they're required by law to do 5-year forecasts. And if you look at their 5-year forecast from 5 years ago, they were not expecting this level of growth. They were expecting 10, 15. So in most cases, we're doubling and sometimes tripling. But then they're still saying, we need this revenue to operate. So it's a little hard argument to buy. The only thing I will say is when 920 was created, funding from the state was a much larger percentage of funding than it is today. And so we have created,
Say that again?
when 920 was created, schools were less reliant on local property taxes than they are today because the percentage of funding from the state was higher than
And
it
what
is
was the
now.
percentage of the state budget, however?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, that I don't have that number.
Because I think the percentage of the state budget that goes to school districts has remained the same.
That's right. I think that's right. Yeah. Questions, things I can explain better as I go.
I was thinking from, simple, average Warren County guy like myself, of how do I actually understand this? And you have helped me. Number one, thank you for being an expert on this. You have helped me over the years so many times when I've not understood how this stuff actually does work. It's very complicated, and we appreciate the fact you're actually an expert on this, so thank you for knowing what you're talking about. I would almost lead it off from the standpoint of, I get bullet points, and I would almost have one of your first slides being, there's good news and there's bad news. And there's one bullet point under the good news. The good news is you live in Warren County and your net worth just went up a lot. Your $300,000 house is now worth $380,000. That's great.
That's great, right?
That is 100% great news. However, there's also a bad associated with that. So then we have, and I came up with so far 5 bullet points under the bad. National inflation has affected us just like it has everyone else. We are not immune from it in Warren County, number one. Number two, the law says every 3 years we must do this revaluation, and we're in the middle of that right now. Number three, the tax rate is based on this valuation, period. Next one, 85% of this money goes to your local school districts, and the school districts are for this. And then the final point is, your taxes are gonna go up. I mean, I would just lay it out and hit it up front. This is what we're talking about. And there's literally nothing we at a local level can do about it. This is just the way the law is structured, and this is what it says. So that's, from a marketing standpoint, that's what I would advise you to do, and I'm happy to email those.
No, I appreciate that, I would appreciate, that feedback's what I need, because like I said, I just live this too much, and I get into the weeds, so the more simplistic I can make it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to process if my colleagues agree. Those are my takeaways.
Yes.
And I think you hit people with that and give them the information up front. There's one really good thing, and then there's at least 5 bullet points that are not good, and it explains it pretty concisely. And then number 2, I was thinking the same thing. We are so blessed in this county. We are in great financial shape, and even we're in great shape. So maybe we do talk about trying to roll back a little bit of that tax if you're in we can obviously discuss that, but if you're in agreement, you're our chief financial officer.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that staff and I would like to talk about more as we look through what the building plans are and things like that. I think it's something we need to look at.
May I ask a question here? What, if any effort are you gonna make to communicate this message to the title company industry and the bar association? And how that translates to the county specifically is the unsophisticated buyer buys property, the closing agent prorates taxes based on the prior year. You're in that King School District and you get hammered, they get their first tax bill, and they're like, well, we only got a credit for X, and this is so much higher Y, to let them know that. And then the second thing we need to respond to is, do we have any state certified appraisers in our mass appraisal contract? I'm asking that question because, as we all know, and it's fresh on our mind, is our veteran assistant prosecutor represents Board of Revision is retiring. We're gonna have to put somebody in that position, and I suspect there's gonna be a lot of BOR complaints when this happens.
Yeah. So, I'm very concerned that our veteran senior Chris is retiring, and not being replaced. So I'm hoping we can find a replacement for him. That position's been critical to, our office for 20 years, longer. And so I'd like to think that I can fill that role somewhat, but legally I can't. So I'm concerned about that. We will have a lot of Board of Revision complaints. It is going to be a huge battle next year. Every 3 years, we have a lot of Board of Revision complaints. We've never seen values like this go up, and we've never seen commercial values go up, which is where most of our Board of Revisions come from. And there is a side hustle business out there for these attorneys where they just file Board of Revision complaints. That's just their job, and they get paid as a percentage of what they get back to that taxpayer if they win. And so there are going to be a lot that are generated as a result of this. So I'm very concerned about that. Great staff at the prosecutor's office, but it's hard to replace 25 years of knowledge and experience. So I'm concerned about that. I speak to the Bar Association every 3 years, give the same presentation, and continue to do that. I don't have a lot of problems. I feel like lawyers in general do a very good job of explaining this. Most people don't use a lawyer when they buy a property. They use a realtor. I do not have the same nice things to say about realtors. There are some excellent realtors in Warren County that do a great job. Some that have sat down with me for hours and gone through this and done videotapes for clients. And there are a lot of realtors that don't know who the county auditor is or what they do. And it's a real struggle. We had a property owner in Lebanon that I met with last week, who bought a property for a lot of money, and the value got raised based on that sale price, and he had no idea. He said his realtor never mentioned to him, never brought it up that it was a possibility, and he was very upset. And so I try to get that through to our realtors, but I don't know. There are a lot of good realtors, but there are a lot that want to get a sale, and they will do what they need to do to get a sale, and it's a struggle. So I've done everything I can to go to the realtor groups to speak to them. My neighbor to the north, Carl Keith, the Montgomery County auditor, is excellent at PR, and he speaks to a lot of the realtor groups in Springboro and Franklin. But it's usually preaching to the choir. The ones you're talking to
Right.
are the good ones that, you know, and so we'll continue to do that. If you know of some groups, or I'm always happy to go out. I think I have 42 different meetings scheduled to go speak about this topic over the next few months. But any more that we can add to the list, especially ones during the day, are great. Just fill that
You're saying
calendar.
that essentially the realtors, it was a $500,000 property 7 years ago, now you just paid $1 million, and they see the property taxes based on the $500,000 sale, and they're not, the realtors community is not saying, hey, this is gonna be at $1 million, so you're not paying $3,000 anymore, you're paying $6,000.
That's exactly right. That's not, usually what happens, what I've seen happen is they print out that summary page on my website that says what the taxes are, and they hand it to someone, and they say, that's what your taxes are gonna be. And you take, you know, your mortgage payment, you divide it by 12, you divide the taxes by 12, and they say, that's what you're gonna pay. Because that's how people think, is what are my monthly payments gonna be, right? And it's not the way to do it. It's not the way to do it, but I see it all of the time. And it's always higher, and a lot of times it's finished basements that we don't find out until they list the house for sale. That raises the value. You come into something like this raises the value, raises the taxes, and they're never discussed. And those are the angriest people in my office, are the people that are in that situation, because they planned, they thought they were doing what they were supposed to do, and they just didn't get the good information. So,
The only other thing I will comment is I'm glad that you're treating the commercial properties with a wise understanding that, you know, I think you and I talked about, I had some experience in Hamilton County where an office building was raised value 30% on an office building in Hamilton County. And it was like, are you kidding me? You know, that it's hard to give away an office building right now, and you're trying to, you know, you're just gonna put every office building out of business. If you start, you know, when tenants are not renewing, there's vacancy rates are way up, the free market is saying they are not worth more. And yet, certain communities were trying to still assess those, so I'm glad that you're at least understanding what the real market for that is.
we're trying, like I said, I know we'll get some wrong, but we're trying.
Did you tell the new treasurer he's got a big job ahead of him?
Well, he gets the year off. He doesn't have to deal with it. He doesn't take office till next September, so he gets to come in after all the hard work's done.
Clean it up. I'm here to clean it up. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Let me know if I can do anything. I appreciate all the work you guys put in. Thanks.
Good luck in Deerfield, I saw you're going down there.
tonight.
Oh, yeah, have fun. Very good. Next, we have an administrative hearing, continuance to consider a site plan review application, DC Engineering and Consulting, to construct individual self-storage units in Harlan Township. For the record, would the clerk please read in, for the record, some of these details?
So the site was posted with signage on June 3rd, 2024. Legal notices were mailed on May 8th, 2024, and the legal ad was published in the Journal News on May 19th, 2024.
Very good. Since this is an administrative hearing, if anyone's going to speak on this matter, if you'd please stand, I'm going to swear you in. If you'd raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Very good. We're going to go ahead and hear from county zoning.
Thank you, good morning. Ray Dratt, I have sworn in. We have an intern here with us. Her name is Avril. She's been doing an outstanding job. We're here today to talk about a site plan review. Case number is 101-2024. The applicant is a Justin DeMint, that is the engineer. The owner is Eric White, who is present in the room here today. The township is Harlan. The address is 6846 Route 28, Pleasant Plain, Ohio, 45162. The property identification number is 1831400019. The property size in Warren County is 3.267 acres, with an additional 4.73 acres in Claremont County, for a total of 8.02 acres, the other half being in Goshen Township. The current zoning district is B2, Community Commercial Business Zone. Future land use map is agricultural. The existing land use is self-storage units. The issue for consideration is approval of the site plan for the storage units on the site.
Even though they're already there?
Yes, sir.
So we're basically just cleaning up zoning because they're already there, but they were built?
That is correct. We approved, or you guys approved the change in zoning in 2022, and the ball got dropped, new system, and the units went up. And one of our inspectors noticed this, and we immediately ceased all construction and are here today to get the site plan approved.
Wait, so I don't understand that. What happened? Can you repeat that? Because I don't understand what you're saying. So we approved
Zoning.
the zoning, and you didn't update our approval of zoning, and therefore the zoning or the usage that they started to use it for, which we had approved the zoning change, wasn't applicable, and now we've got to go back and make it, explain this to me.
No, so there was a request to rezone the property from rural residential to B2. That was approved.
Okay,
The second stage of that should have been a site plan review to bring it in front of the county commissioners to approve the use, which is self-storage units. That didn't happen.
wait, why didn't that happen?
I wasn't here at the time, but
Was that
I
our
can
fault
assume.
that it didn't happen?
What's that?
Was it our fault that it didn't happen?
100% zoning's fault, yes.
So it's our zoning department's fault.
That is correct, and it was a computer.
So,
we
so
went to-
our fault was that this didn't get properly, something didn't get in the records, and we stopped their project because of this?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, well, that's really not good.
That's correct. So, like I said, the zoning was changed. We are here today to try to clean this up and present the site plan for approval.
So this is just literally administrative. This board changed from rural zoning over to a B2 zoning, and these storage units are 100% allowed under that zoning, but we did not do the step of actually having a site plan review.
That's correct. That
And
was
so
over.
now, and so then the owner started down the path, I'm approved, I'm fine, I'm building stuff, and then all of a sudden we go in and say, you gotta stop because we didn't do this.
That's correct.
Okay, let's try to get this over with quickly.
Roger that, sir. Here's a site of the area in Warren County, in the blue area. This is the provided site plan. It has all the required buffers, 50 on the north, 30 on the east, some trees, all the lighting survey. The landscaping site plan, just what I spoke about, there's some existing trees in the rear or the north, and then stuff on the east side is all new, as well as the stuff that faces 128. Here's a tree survey of the current trees on location and what is proposed. A lighting survey, pole height shown at 20 feet, 2.0 foot candles at the property line. These are the building heights. This is building A, it's currently already there. It's got a 9-foot 2-inch height. And building B is the same. Staff summary in the plot plan, you'll see 5 spaces are shown on the application, but the business has no employees, so there really is requirement of 0. Landscaping, like I said, that is an incorrect statement on the, on this slide. East side should be 30 feet, and not 50. The north side, existing large mature trees, and you can see the breakdown of how many trees are required. Lighting meets the standard, and the signage is a 4x8 sign attached near the eave of the building, which is in standard. These are the reviewing departments. Here's RPC's comments. And everything on here is been addressed. F, location of septic system. This is the future storage units, there's nobody there. It's all automated, done on your phone or on your computer. So there's no running waters, no facilities, just storage.
All right, very good.
Okay, so the construction was underway,
Yes, ma'am.
and we had construction ceased. And does what was being constructed on the site meet these?
It does.
It does, okay,
Yeah.
so this is literally a formality
It
to
is.
approve the site plan for this site so that this private investor can continue to build out their project the way that they had intended to build it out. It's in compliance with our criteria.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Very good. I'm going to use a little discretion and expedite this. Sir, you're the owner?
Yes,
Could you state your name?
Derek White.
And you've been sworn in?
I have.
Are you okay with the RPC comments?
I am.
Very good. This is a public hearing. Anyone else want to speak on this matter? Anyone in favor want to speak? Anyone opposed want to speak? I'll make a motion, or entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
And roll call?
I'll make a motion that we, you want a roll call on the
Yeah.
closing of the meeting?
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes. I'll make a motion that we adopt the site plan.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes. We're sorry, sir. You full speed ahead.
Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry we couldn't get to this 2 weeks ago when we had to continue it as well because we didn't post the signage. So, thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Public meeting. Anyone else wish to address the board? Our interns getting some good experience. You digging it?
Exciting stuff.
Rock on. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
And yes.